so that you all can stay in touch. Anybody have a problem with that? Okay, cool. So why don't we start with a simple grounding meditation, and I will guide you through it. How does that sound? So why don't we start with both feet on the floor. I'll be sitting up, like not rigid, but just straight, so your body is kind of at attention. Relaxed. Hands in your lap. Before I go any further, I'm going to just say that everything I offer is an invitation. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You don't have to do anything that makes you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. These are all offerings. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And just take a couple of deep, deep breaths. We're just focusing on slow, deep breathing. And I'd like you to notice what your body is feeling. Just come into your body. I'd like you to notice the feeling of your bottom in the chair. And notice the feeling of your back resting against whatever it's resting against, or just the air behind it. Notice the feeling of your hands in your lap. And notice the temperature of the room. And just become aware of the sensations of breathing. You can feel the air coming in. You can feel the air moving out. You're not trying to breathe faster or slower or deeper or shallower. You're just aware of breathing. You may notice thoughts and chatter in your head. That's okay. The mind does that. Just, be aware of it. The subject matter of our thoughts doesn't really matter that much. It's just thoughts are coming and going. And gently, if you can, relax your shoulders. And relax the space around your eyes. You might want to let your jaw open and close a little bit just to relax the muscles around your jaw. If you're clenching your teeth, you can unclench them. When your mind wanders off, as it inevitably will, that's okay. Just notice that and come back. If you're having any feelings or emotions, that's okay. Just notice what that feels like physically in your body. All feelings, all emotions have a physical location in the body. We can learn to identify. If you start to feel really settled, that's okay. If you don't, that's okay too. So we're just going to sit quietly with this for a minute or two. You're just being in your body and being with your breathing. And at the end of that, I'll ring a bell and just open your eyes on an in-breath. Welcome back. Anybody want to say a little bit about what that was like? Nobody has to. Okay. So let's move on. I'll just go over some logistics, boundaries, blah, blah, blah. First off, a lot of you know that I'm a therapist. This is not therapy. Just need to make that clear. Okay, we're not doing psychotherapy. This is meditation training. Although the practices I'm teaching are grounded in Buddhism and Buddhist teachings, this is not specifically a class on Buddhism. If anybody would like to know more about that, y'all can contact me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. I would like to encourage confidentiality. Sometimes people process things and their experience of meditation. Sometimes it takes them to deep spaces. I would like this to be a safe space where people know that they can speak their minds and heart. So I'm going to discourage direct crosstalk and overtalk. And I'm going to encourage us all to be kind and supportive of one another. I'm also going to encourage a commitment. Meditation is really helpful if you do it. So I'm going to encourage a daily meditation practice, and I'm going to teach you the basics of that today. And as we go down the road, I'll be filling in more pieces of that. Questions about any of that so far? Okay, we're good. So this is a mindfulness meditation practice. I'm going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and what it is. I'm going to talk a little bit about meditation and what that is. And then I'm going to take you through the basic meditation practice that we will be building on over the next few weeks, and we're going to practice that. Talk a little bit about meditation posture in the body. It's time for questions. I'm going to show you a really cool app that helps with this, and talk about what comes next. So that's what's on the agenda today. If you have any questions, just wave at me or jump in. So let's talk about meditation and the benefits of meditation. Meditation is simply learning to be present in a mindful space, and I'll talk a little bit more about what a mindful space is. There are a lot of benefits to meditation. As a therapist, I'm always teaching my clients to meditate because it helps. The effects of meditation are subtle, but they are cumulative. You will start to notice you're a little more relaxed. You'll be a little more focused. Meditation lowers the blood pressure. It improves the functioning of the cardiovascular system. It helps to release muscle tension. And we're going to be doing some body-centered exercises as this goes on. If you are prone to headaches and migraines, it can help with that. Often, we all have difficult physical experiences at times. And I'm not saying this is a cure for physical pain, but it helps us relate to it differently. It's really good for insomnia. It helps relieve insomnia, which I know is an issue for some people. It helps reduce anxiety and depression. Helps generate optimism. Just be more, you'll find that you're more relaxed over time. The big things will become smaller. The smaller things will become even smaller. You'll have more control over where your thoughts go. And how because we narrate our lives. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that. And there's actually some interesting physiology. Your brain, right about here, just above the eye, just behind the temple in what I think is the parietal lobe, there's an area about the size, about that big, not much larger than a quarter. It controls relaxation response. It controls focus. It controls ability to come back and stay in the present moment. It controls your ability to stop your thoughts and change them. That sort of stuff. There's a guy who I encountered at the Mindfulness and Psychotherapy conference named Rick Hansen. And he shows you these slides of pictures of monks meditating and got sensors all over their brains, all over their heads. And one of the things that he's discovered is that little area behind the parietal lobe that regulates all of that I was just talking about actually grows denser. It grows synapses with the mindfulness meditation practice. So the more you practice it, the more your brain becomes attuned to be able to bring you into the present moment. Questions about any of that so far? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness and the art of mindfulness. Mindfulness, this is a mindfulness meditation practice in that it is training us to be in the present moment. Mindfulness is the art, and it is an art, of being what's happening in the present moment without judgment, without fear and remorse, without attachment. It sounds simple, and it kind of is, but it also takes a lot of practice. Our experience is in two parts. Here's what happens. Here's what we tell ourselves about what happens. Most people don't know that these are separate. What happens just kind of gets presented to us, right? We're walking through our lives and things kind of come to us. That's fine. Over here on this side, we make that up and we decide what it is. I read one time that the Hopi Indians believe that in every situation there's 88 possibilities. I don't know where they came up with that. And I don't care, but I just decided that I like it. What I have decided to believe about that is if you lay an 8 on its side, it's the symbol for infinity. So maybe in every situation is infinite possibilities. So here's what happens. Here's what we tell ourselves about what happens. This just happens, right? This has 88 possibilities. Your car won't start. How do you narrate that to yourself? You can say, I'm going to have a terrible day. People do that, sets the tone for the day. You can say, oh, well, this is a momentary inconvenience. Now there's 86 other possibilities. Mindfulness is the art, and I keep calling it an art because you have to practice an art. You are not going to learn this. You are going to learn to practice it. I've been meditating for 30 years. I don't know how to do it. I just practice it. I've been doing psychotherapy for 25 years. I don't know how to do that either. I practice it. I'm learning it on an ongoing basis. Anybody who tells you that they have this down doesn't really understand it. Here's one way to look at it. What am I doing? Somebody answer. Kimberlyn, what am I doing?
You're looking at your palm.
Right. Okay. Now what am I doing?
Are you giving me the finger?
Okay. Anybody, what do you make of that? Am I flipping you off? Does it look like I'm flipping you off? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your mind telling you about that right now?
What did I do?
Okay. Anybody else have a thought on that? How many of you assume that I'm making a gesture that if you if you made it to say your school teacher, your police officer, or your parent might get you in trouble? Okay. Here's what happens. What you're telling yourself about what happens is you're telling yourself that I'm flipping you off. Here's the actual truth. Somewhere along the line, probably when I was working as a writer, I damaged this tendon and it swells up a little bit. And you have a little tunnel right here in your knuckle, which is similar to the carpal tunnel. When this swells up, it actually catches when I go like this. So sometimes I have to do that. You understand the point that I'm making? Here's what happened. What you told yourself about what was happening was that, oh, Ken's an a-hole, he's flipping us off. What I'm actually demonstrating is that my hand has an injury. It usually doesn't bother me. I can usually go like this, but every now and then. Any Grateful Dead fans? Jerry Garcia holds a pick so that his finger is like this, and there are people, he plays like this. There are people who assumed that he was flipping off the audience. Like flipping the bird to 19,000 people at Madison Square Garden. There was actually some controversy about that back in the day. But so here's what happens. Here's what we tell ourselves about what happens. The art of mindfulness is recognizing the difference between what's happening and the narrative. We choose the narrative, and recognizing what's actually happening is actually happening. The narrative is not what's actually happening. It's just how we're narrating. 99.9 times out of 100 in the present moment, really nothing is happening. And this is especially important to remember if you're someone who experiences anxiety, or if you're someone who experiences cravings. By the way, I'm an addict. I know something about cravings. Clean and sober for some period of time. We're starting to feel anxious. We're starting to feel like we're not okay. Okay, and we start to have an inner dialogue about that. I'm not okay. I'm not safe. I'm messed up, whatever it is. One of the values of mindfulness and what we're going to be studying here is if you look around in the present moment, 99.9% of the time, nothing is actually happening. And later on, probably not today, we're going to get into a discussion of why we do, how we're wired for that kind of negativity, because there is like physiological neurobiology behind that. And I will get into that when I talk about mindfulness of thinking. Questions about any of that? What does somebody think? Emily, what are you thinking right now?
What am I thinking right now? I'm trying to focus on the computer screen, trying to block out my dog snoring in the corner,
Okay.
the sun coming up behind me, people walking around in the courtyard. That's it.
Okay. Notice what I said, what are you thinking right now? You came right into the present moment, which is where your life is actually happening. Right. The mind takes us out into the past and the future all the time. The other thing about mindfulness and meditation practice as I teach it, you're going to notice that I bring you into your body a lot. There's a reason for that. The mind, any Doctor Who fans? Nobody? Now you need to make an appointment to come to my office. Doctor Who travels around in this thing called the Tardis. It looks like a phone booth. It can travel anywhere in time and space. The mind is like that. The mind is a Tardis. It is not a physical object. It takes you out into tomorrow where you're worried about whatever is going to happen. You're plotting your Halloween costume, or worried about that paper you have to write, or that meeting you have to go to, or whatever it is. Or you're back in yesterday, thinking about something that could have happened, should have happened, that you liked that or you didn't like that. The mind travels in time and space. The body is a physical object. You cannot leave your body. It is always here in the present moment. So what I'm going to be teaching you is very body-centered. My meditation teacher, Gil, used to say, be with your feet. He probably still says it, but I just don't hang out with him as much as I used to. Be where your feet are. Everything is fine. In the present moment, nothing is happening. So, questions about any of that? So we're going to do a little exercise. I've got 8 people, or 8 screens. How many of y'all are there at Genesis' house? 6, okay. So I'm going to ask you all to split up at Genesis, to split up into groups of 2. I'm going to give you a little exercise to do. I'm going to hit a button that breaks us out into breakout rooms. I'm not sure how this is going to work with having a group of people in one window, but we'll wing it. So We have 8 windows. I'm going to set it up so that you're each with a partner, and I'm going to give you a little exercise to do about being in the present moment. And the folks at Genesis House just pick a partner. We're just going to narrate our experience for a minute. And it's just going to go like this. I'm holding up my right hand. I'm moving my hand across my head. I'm putting my hand on my chest. I'm leaning back in my chair. I'm leaning forward again. I'm looking to the right. I'm looking to the left. I'm scratching my eye. I'm pulling on my beard. Just going to do that for a minute with your partner. I'll time it, and then I'll tell you to switch. I won't be able to see all of you, so it might just go down in mid-sentence. And then at the end of another minute, I'll bring us all back together, and we'll talk about what that's like. So I've only used this feature once before, ever. I push on this button, and I'm going to break us out into 4 rooms. And as I said, the folks at Genesis House can just sort of figure out how to pair up. And whoever in one of the other windows joins that group will just navigate it. So Bobby's going to be in the room with Genesis House. Kristen and Trish are going to be together. Brianna and Emily are going to be together. And Kimberly, I think you're stuck with me. So that should do it. Okay. We're going to do about a minute to 90 seconds. A minute to 90 seconds for each person, then I will bring you all back here. Okay, switch. Okay, I'm going to bring you all back now. Yeah, I'm not so adept at this feature, so it actually sets its own clock for bringing everybody back. I also didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to join any of the rooms. So
Actually, there were three of us. I was in the room with Genesis House and Kimberly.
yeah. Well, but because when I push the button, it
And since my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, when I pushed the button, I couldn't join the room with Kimberlyn. So yeah, when I pushed the button, it wouldn't let me join the dyad with Kimberlyn, and she was like sitting there by herself. So I put her in the room with Genesis House. So, you know, it's technology. We do the best we can. So, anybody want to tell me what that was like? Yeah, Brianna.
Hard. Much more difficult than I would have anticipated for just like, oh, be present in your moment. I felt like I was reaching, I felt like I was overthinking, and things that I would naturally do, I felt like I was almost like forcing myself to try and do them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mind is kind of a busy place, isn't it? Anybody else? How about Kristen? You are muted.
Okay. So yeah, it felt like that minute lasted forever when I had to describe what I was doing. And my mind was definitely going out of the present moment and into other things as well, things that I have to do in the future. So it was challenging, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like really forced kind of thing to
I'm sorry?
do. It felt forced as an exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mind does not automatically go to the present moment. It's kind of weird because the body's there all the time and we actually live there, but the mind doesn't automatically go there. We have to like kind of push it there. Any of the women at Genesis House, all of whose names I have already forgotten?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Anybody want to tell me what that exercise was like for y'all?
Go ahead, Lacey. Me personally, I don't know if it's like just from getting sober or what's going on, but like my mind's not really taking me anywhere, to the past, to the future. I don't know if I'm like emotionally retarded right now or, you know.
Well, that brings me to an interesting point. There's no right or wrong way to do any of what I'm teaching you. We as a culture tend to be hard on ourselves. Emotionally retarded is a very ungentle way of describing yourself. Would you let anybody else talk to you like that? If I came to you and then the first, say, 42 minutes that you and I had known each other, I said, you know, you're emotionally retarded. Would you let me get away with that? Right, so I'm going to suggest that you offer yourself the same kindness and compassion that you would offer to anybody else. at a place like Genesis House, you are learning to be kind and supportive to one another. Offer that first to the person in the mirror. Any compassion without self-compassion is incomplete. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about self-compassion as we go down the road with this. But one of the things that I need to, if there's a thread that runs through everything that we're going to do these 4 weeks, it's self-compassion and being kind to yourself. You cannot do this wrong. The doing it is the doing it. What I'm teaching you is a gentleness practice. It's a self-compassion practice. It's easy, and it's easy to fall into being hard on ourselves. Especially when you first start meditating and you notice how noisy it is up there between the ears. There's no man's land up there. It's no man's land right here. I'm the only man in the room. And the mind defaults to a negative space. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. This is the most important thing I will ever say to any of you. Be kind and gentle with yourself all the time. Especially those of us in recovery. We all have a past. Some of it is not pretty. That's okay. We're learning to be different people. And the path to that is not in self-blame and being hard on ourselves and recrimination. That never gets us anywhere. And quite frankly, if all that self-loathing and being hard on ourselves was ever going to help, it would have helped by now. So really what we need is a different paradigm. And that's what we're practicing now. But you may be emotionally retarded, but guess what? So am I. Isn't it cool? Maybe that's our superpower. Go for it. Anybody else want to comment on the exercise we just did? Okay. Kimberlyn.
I guess I was talking with the Genesis House. Like I found it very easy to quickly say all the things that I found that were distracting me or that were bothering me or things that I was doing or anxiety or anything like that. But I can't recall saying anything positive that I was doing or something that was going on around me. Like the sun's shining in my house and I didn't pay a lick of attention to that. But anything negative I did, and that's what I paid attention to, and that's what I could talk about.
Welcome to the default position of the mind.
What?
Welcome to the default position of the mind.
Present.
I'm going to do a whole section on mindfulness of thinking, where I'll talk a little bit more about this. But the mind, the part that we hear, what I refer to as the radio station of the mind, defaults negative. It just goes there. It's generated by the back of the brain. The front of the brain, prefrontal cortex, is how you know what language I'm speaking and how you know how to get home at the end of the day. And it's not how you know how to read. It's where all of your so-called executive thinking is, where you make conscious and reasonable and planned decisions. The back of the mind, the hippocampus, is where you're surviving. Fight, flight, play dead. There's 5, but I can't remember them all. But fight, flight, play dead is the ones that everybody knows about. And there's that part of the brain that's actually generating the thought stream. One of the things you get from mindfulness meditation, we don't turn off the noise. We learn to have a different relationship with it. And we can choose to be kind and gentle with ourselves. We can learn to recognize when the thought stream is taking us off into an ungentle place. And we can say, no, I don't want to do that. And we can redirect it. But first we have to be awake enough, as in awake like in the 12 steps, we have to be awake enough to recognize that we're doing that. And meditation is a practice of learning to be awake enough to recognize that. So, questions about any of that so far? All right. So now we're going to, I'm going to put a couple of things up in the chat. And I'm going to save the chat and email it to y'all. The first thing I'm going to put up there is I invited y'all to the Facebook page for Indiana Mindfulness Insight, Indiana Insight Meditation. There's also a discussion group. One of the things that I have learned, the way Facebook sets these things up, is you cannot add files in a page, but you can in a group. Okay, so here is the link to the Facebook group. And I'm also publishing a link to an essay I wrote on mindfulness. It's about a 1-minute read. When you go to that group, you know, join, and I'll get a notice that you're trying to join, and I'll join you. In the files section is a PDF with the instructions that I'm about to give you. And I'm also going to, before we end today, I'm going to show you this really cool app called the Insight Timer. You can download it. It's free. So that while you're meditating, you don't have to open your eyes and look at the clock every 3 minutes to see where you are and what you're doing. And as I said, I will save the chat and email that to you, or I'll just email you the links, whatever. It's navigating here. Okay. How many of you are waiting for me to teach you to meditate? Well, guess what? We've arrived. I'm going to teach you a basic mindfulness meditation practice. And we're going to spend about 10 or 15 minutes in that. The first thing I want to tell you about that is you cannot do this wrong. The doing it is the doing it. Your mind is going to drift all over the place. That's fine. It is the function of the mind to do that. Just when you notice it, I'll give you some instructions on what to do with that. So a little note on posture. This is a grounding practice. Meditation in general is a grounding practice. So you want to be sitting, if you're sitting cross-legged, that's fine. If you're in a chair, both feet on the floor, sitting up straight. Some people sit in a half lotus position. I am 3 knee surgeries later. My body is not going to do that. And if I try to do that, I will need all of you to come over to my house and like lift me up. So don't do anything that is physically painful. And as I said before, everything I'm offering is an invitation. You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to do anything that feels unsafe or uncomfortable. So let's just assume a posture with, your feet on the floor, and you're somewhat grounded, and your hands in your lap, and your back up straight, not like rigid straight, but just, sitting up straight. Not like slouch back in the chair, just up straight. And we're going to invite you to close your eyes. And I'm going to invite you to just be aware of your body. Just come into your body. You're aware of your feet on the floor. You're aware of your bottom in the chair. You're aware of your back in the chair. You're aware of the sensation in your palms of your hands resting on your lap or wherever they're resting. You're aware that your eyes are closed. You're aware of the feeling of the room around you. If it's warm, if it's cool, there's a draft or a breeze, you're aware of that. And I would like you to bring your attention to your breathing. Just be aware of the body breathing. There's a number of ways you can do that. The two I'm going to suggest, but do whatever works for you. You can focus on the feeling of your chest and belly moving up and down. You can focus on the sensation of the air moving in and out of your nose. But let's just focus on your breathing. And relax your shoulders. And if you can, gently relax the space around, the muscles around your eyes and your jaw. We tend to hold our belly kind of tight. Just let your belly loose. Soft belly. Just softening the body. And you're just focused on your breathing. Now, here's what's going to happen. Your mind is going to wander off. And that's fine. The mind just does that. The mind is not used to sitting still. Your mind is going to wander off. You may notice that right away or not. You may be lost in thought for some period of time before you even notice it or not. That's fine. When you notice that, just decide it's okay and come back to your breathing. Decide it's okay and come back to your breathing. Without recrimination, without scolding yourself, without deciding, I can't do this, not just saying you're doing it wrong because you're not doing it wrong. Just come back to your breathing. So we're just going to sit quietly with that. One thing that I like to do, you breathe in As you breathe out, you can say to yourself, here, H-E-R-E. Just as a reminder that you're here. So this is all we're going to do. Very simple. We're going to sit quietly. We're going to focus on our breathing. When the mind wanders off, which it will, just come back. It's that simple. That's the practice. And at the end of like 10 or 15 minutes, we can do this, and then I'll ring the bell. If you wander off, just come back. Without recrimination, gently, firmly. Here, in the present moment. Your mind wanders off. Don't worry about it. It just does that. It's the function of the mind to wander and think. You're just coming back to the present moment. Just breathing in and out. Just being gentle. Just come back to here. Whatever you're doing it right. Just breathing in and out. Just here in the present moment. Okay. Seem to have lost Genesis House. Anybody want to talk about what that was like? Emily? You had to know I was going to call on somebody.
Well, coming from someone who like is brand new to this whole situation, I did feel a little bit panicky when you kind of like walked us through how long we were going to be like sitting here, you know, eyes closed, trying to not think about, you know, anything. So I found myself getting a little frustrated because no matter how frequently I was like, okay, I'm here, I'm in the present, it was like immediately my mind was like, meow.
Right.
But like in the end, it was, I think, easier than I like expected it to be, but it was definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Sometimes, look, I've been doing this almost 30 years. Sometimes my mind gets really quiet for about 6 seconds. Right? No, sometimes it gets really peaceful up there. Sometimes it's like every kindergarten class in America converged at the same time, right behind my eyes. Sometimes I've just wandered off, and I don't even notice it. And then I notice it and I come back and I say, and then I wander off again. The mind just does that. People come back to me and say, I can't meditate, I can't learn to do this because I can't get my mind to go quiet. The mind doesn't go quiet. We're learning to have a different relationship with the noise. Genesis House is trying to get back in the room. I really need to change the settings so that you just come in when you come in. Sorry about that, Genesis. I didn't see you guys were in the waiting room. I'm going to try to change this. I thought I had the settings, so there was no waiting room. We were talking about what the meditation was like, and somebody had said at first they got kind of anxious. That anxiety, what did you notice about that? Physically, what did it feel like? Where did you notice that?
I felt like I was like a little tense. And it kind of like made me feel like I was like setting myself up for failure almost, because I was like, oh gosh, like we got to do this for how long? Like there's no way I could do that kind of a thing.
When you first start out, 10 or 15 minutes can feel like a very long time. You can't fail. That's the mind doing the default that I talked about. The mind assumes that we're not going to be okay. And I'll get into that in more detail down the road. If I'm going to feel anxious, it's going to be like here, right here, like right in the middle of my chest, and it feels like something's like pulling me forward. Or like right in the pit of my stomach, I feel like I want to implode. If I'm sad, it's usually like here. If I'm like angry or just tense in general, my shoulders feel like they're trying to fold my body in half. We're going to be doing a little bit of mindfulness of the body. When I first started meditating, I was very hard on myself. And I still go through, I still say, oh, you're frustrated. But just notice, oh, frustrated, not a big deal. I was really lucky a number of years ago, I got to see the Dalai Lama. That's pretty cool. And during the Q&A, somebody asked him, what about anger and frustration? And he just like shrugged and said, oh, I experienced that. like it's nothing. So you're just having part of the natural flow of experience, and it's just fine. And you're just fine. Anybody else want to talk a little bit about what the meditation, what that experience is like? Brianna.
I had the complete opposite experience of Emily. I actually ended up like so relaxed. I thought I was like fading out a little bit. I was like, oh God, I need to open my eyes because I'm going to fall asleep. And I had some outside distractions. My kid is home with my husband, and I like put my sound machine on, hoping that would be enough to drown them out a little bit. It's not. So there were like a couple instances where I got super distracted by them and then started thinking about, is everything okay in my house? Are they getting along? Is it fine? Is it okay? Do I need to stop what I'm doing? But I opened my eyes and kind of just focused on, I looked right out my window and I've got these like gorgeous trees with the snow and the sun is shining, and it kind of just like brought me right back. And at the same time, you were like, if your mind is wandering, just come back. If you're not breathing, just breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So your prompts were very helpful in helping me to actually stay present with what we were doing. But yeah, it did make me very tired too.
Yeah, okay, I hear that. Couple of things I heard you say. One is about falling asleep. I don't want to be the guy snoring in the meditation hall. That's the only concern about that. I've been going to meditation groups off and on for years and years, and we're all sitting there, and behind me on the right I hear, right? I don't want to be that guy, and I've been that guy, right? So then the mind, flipping to a default position, tells me that I should be embarrassed and ashamed that I'm disrupting the whole group, and now the earth is going to tilt off its axis and plunge into the sun, right? If you fall asleep, you fall asleep. The other thing that I don't want to have happen in a meditation group, I don't want to fall asleep and lean over onto the guy next to me, because I've had that happen. Like the person sitting next to me was like, my teacher, Gil, and I'm going to send you guys the link to his YouTube channel, because he does a guided meditation every morning at 7 o'clock California time. And I'm usually on it, and they're all recorded. And I've just found it really helpful. But I was at a retreat with Gil, it was like 7 days, and we're all sitting there. And I look up, now Gil's been doing this for a really, really long time, like 40 years. I look up and there's Gil doing one of these. You know, that thing, your body catches you just before you're about to like fall over. So we're going to talk about different meditation positions down the road. Some people, especially people with back issues, meditate lying down, just like with your arms like that. And then you'll start to notice, right? So falling asleep, you know, everybody does it. I had a meditation teacher named John Travis. He's really great. I went on a day-long meditation retreat with him one time, and I said, I keep falling asleep. He said, well, I guess you're tired. It's not any more complicated than that. And because the mind defaults negative, we're going to take that part of the mind, which is a very small part of the mind, we're going to talk more about that going down the road, is going to tell you you're screwing it up, but you're not. The other thing you mentioned was all the distractions. There's this idea that we have to have this calm, peaceful, quiet place to meditate. Some of the Buddhist monasteries are in like heavily populated Muslim areas where they are never out of earshot of the call to prayer. The San Francisco Zen Center, where Gil used to be the lead teacher, the back wall of the meditation hall is on this alley in a not so wonderful neighborhood in San Francisco. Been there. And they could hear people doing dope deals, turning tricks, having conversations, you know, everything you would expect. So, you know, I'm meditating. There's a window like a couple of feet here out of my front lawn. The guy across the street is mowing the lawn. Guy goes by on a motorcycle. Just notice that. Oh, I'm hearing that. That's it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Don't get attached to what you're hearing or what you're perceiving. Just notice, oh, hearing. Okay, I'm sitting here, hearing. I have an itch. Oh, itching. Just like note it. Just notice what, and you know, you might have a body response to that. You know, you hear your kids fighting. Welcome to parenthood. As long as you're not throwing things at each other, it's all cool. You hear your kids fighting, and you might notice you're having a body experience of that. Just notice that. Your stomach tightens up, or your shoulders tighten up, or your face goes. We store a lot of tension, like right here, and in our jaws, you might notice that. This isn't about trying to shut things out. It's about noticing the flow of your experience. Because you were noticing all the noise, and then the noise was gone, and then you were noticing something else, and then that passed. It's just a sort of like flow of experience going by. Anybody else? Any of the women at Genesis House whose names I've all forgotten?
I was actually so deep in the meditation, I guess, like we lost connection, and I was the only one that didn't notice it until I heard a snickering in the background and opened my eyes, and the whole thing was shutting off. So, I mean, I was pretty calm, and you know, I mean, my mind would drift every once in a while, just a little bit, and I mean, I'd just bring it right back to the breathing. You know, they're still cooking breakfast in the next room, so they're, you know, chatting a little bit, and I mean, there's things going on, but I just kept trying to bring it back to the breathing, so it's pretty relaxing.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's like. The doing it is the doing it. And yeah, you know, the internet is what it is. Just as an aside, I worked in Silicon Valley for 20 years. And the dirty little secret that they don't tell you in Silicon Valley is this stuff doesn't work. It's not reliable. That's just the way it goes. They don't tell you that when they're hitting you up for $600 at the Apple store. But yeah, I mean, we're in the pandemic and we're doing this on Zoom. It kind of is what it is. Any questions about anything that we covered today? Okay. I posted a link to an app. It's called the Insight Timer. It looks like this. It's free. You can download it from the Apple Store or Google Play. All it is, it's a meditation bell. You can set it for however long you want to meditate. It's got different bells. If you really want to have a jarring experience, you can go for this one. It's like having something like a gong right next to your head. You can set it for whatever time you want. It also has what it calls interval bells. And the one I use for that is, I don't know if you can hear that, it's a wood block sound. in the monasteries, in a lot of the monasteries, if you ever get a chance to meditate with a group of people or in a monastery, it's very cool because the energy is very settling. They have somebody ringing what they call an interval bell, because they know the mind is just going to wander off, right? Because that's what it does. So they have somebody at random intervals, they just ring a bell, and everybody notices that and come back. So you can set it up to do that. You can download that. I posted the link to that. The other thing that is included in that is there's a lot of guided meditations, various teachers offering guided meditations. There's also, of course, because it's internet-based, there's the premium version. So if you want to like pay money, it's a couple of bucks. There's a larger catalog of guided meditations and stuff like that. You can look and see who's meditating at the same time you are. You know, if you want to pop your name in there, and just thousands of people all meditating at the same time. So I find that really helpful, because early on, before I knew about that, well, before we all had phones, you know, I would open my eyes and look at the clock every like 3 minutes. And, you know, that phenomenon of you're meditating and you're sure 20 minutes has gone by, you like glance at the clock and it's been 45 seconds, right? Or you're sitting there and you think, surely it must be time. I know the timer is broken. And then you look at it, nope, it's not broken, right? That phenomenon of feeling like you're sitting there and you're meditating, you're waiting for the bell to ring, right? And then it rings, and it feels like no time went by, or it feels like 3 hours have gone by, or maybe you nodded off and fell asleep. But I like the insight timer. I find it helpful. So why don't we do just a really quick grounding meditation, and then we'll talk about what comes next, and then we'll be done. All right? So let's sit up again. And just take some slow, deep breaths. I'm going to invite you to just notice how your shoulders expand when you breathe in. Just like take some extra deep breaths. Let your heart open, let your shoulders expand. As you breathe out, just you're breathing out whatever tension is in your body. As you breathe out, a little longer out breath, just letting your shoulders relax, you're coming into your body. We're just going to do this for a minute or two. Just breathing in and out, noticing your body, noticing your breath. Look grounded in the moment. Okay. I'm going to send you the links that I put in the chat. And I'm going to send you the a PDF with the meditation instructions. And if you join the Facebook group, which I encourage you to do, you'll also find the PDF in a file, and some other interesting, useful stuff that I've put in there. Questions? Sure, Trish.
I'm noticing that you're recording this, and I'm just wondering what is going to happen to the recording.
The recording is going to be available for you to watch. That's about it.
Doesn't go anywhere else.
No.
Thank you.
I'm still training. This is the end of my training to teach. I might show part of my piece of it to my teacher.
Okay.
But yeah, the reason why I'm recording these, some people can't make it at this time, but they said they were interested. So I'm going to be making it available. And it's available to you. Is that okay? All right. Any other questions? Okay, so homework. First thing I'm going to say about homework is I am not going to wag my finger at you next week about homework. If you really feel like you absolutely need me to do that, you should probably call my office and make an appointment. 10 to 15 minutes every day. Just find a time to do that. Longer is better. So I'm going to suggest 15 minutes. Pema Chodron, the great meditation teacher, said meditate for half an hour every day. And if you're absolutely convinced that you don't have time, make it an hour. When I first came into the 12-step thing, my first sponsor said pray and meditate every day. And my first thought was, I don't have time for that. I was way too self-important at the time. I drove a self-important car. I had a self-important job. I don't have time for that. Another voice came to me that I've learned to trust more that said, Ken, if you don't have 10 to 15 minutes every day, just stop, just pause, then you're out of balance. That's still a barometer for me. Those of you who are in recovery, early sobriety can be really, really hard. This will give you a container to make that easier. It'll be less overwhelming. So yeah, practice 15 minutes every day. You'll start to notice a difference after not that long. So with that, I've posted my contact information up in the chat if anybody has any questions between now and next week and wants to contact or talk to me. I will post the recording on the Zoom website, and I'll let you know how to get to that. I will eventually be opening a YouTube channel where I'll record all the stuff that I do. Sometime after, I'm going on vacation in January, and sometime after that, I'm going to start an ongoing meditation group. So thanks a lot, guys. And I'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.
Anybody has any questions or needs to talk about anything, I can hang out for a couple of minutes.